Hi, my name is Stembile R Munonyara, mouthful. Okay, so tonight I'm going to talk to you about how I got here. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, and I'm going to tell you about where I'm going. Okay, so from my name, I'm sure you can all tell I'm an international student. I'm from Zimbabwe. I lived there 19 years of my life, and before I go on, let me explain to you something about Zimbabwe. We're a developed but not developing country, so we're in between. And a lot of people my parents' age, thank God they're not here to hear this, have the mentality that you have to be in the health sector to be successful, or you have to be an accountant, a dentist, a doctor. And so as I was growing up, I decided I wanted to be a nutritionist. I wanted to go into nutrition. And for the longest, that's what I was telling my parents, and I was like, this is what I want to do. So they were like, okay, we will provide the means for you to go to a different country and do what you want to do. That's how I ended up in Missouri. Scary, but I did it. I got here and I shadowed a dietitian while she was at work. And I was standing there the whole time and I'm thinking, I like to cook. I don't want to tell people not to eat things. Like, I like to eat. And that's when I was like, no, I don't think this is for me. So I went on and I'm not going to go into how many departments I've been in this school. And then I met Dr. Jack Roberts. Well, I bet he doesn't even know my name. I bet he doesn't even know how I know him. I was one of the quiet ones in his classes. This man changed my life completely. I was sitting in interpersonal communication and I thought to myself, wow, this is very interesting. It was something that was practical, I was learning, and it was a 9:30 a.m. class. I'm not a morning person, but every morning I would wake up and be like, I'm in that class, just to attend and listen and learn more. At this point I was like, okay, I think I like communications. So I went on and got the courage, Skyped my dad, and I'm like, listen, this is what I want to do. I want to go into communications. Surprisingly, he was like, oh, that's good. That's a great major. And I'm like, okay, well, it's not the response I was looking for, but I'm happy that that's the response he gave me. So he was like, let me look at the catalog and see what communication programs they have at your school. He goes on and then he told me, he was like, why don't you try corporate communication? I thought about it and I was like, well, sounds interesting. So I went on and I enrolled in organizational communication. That's when I met Dr. Terry Concurrent. This is when I fell in love with corporate communication. I'm not the comp studies, I'm corporate communication. And he taught me a lot. I sat there in class and I actually thought to myself, this is when they say parents know everything. That's when I sat down and I was like, yes, I agree with this. Basically, what Dr. Concurrent taught me was that in organizational communication, it's all about what you do. And you can work in any field of study that you choose. And that's when I started thinking, I'm like, okay, well, what am I going to do with corporate communications? And I had a lot of people back home who were like, no, what are you going to do with that? You're not going to make any money. You're not going to go far. And that really did discourage me to a point where I sat down and I cried a lot. And I'm like, what am I going to do with my degree? Like, I'm in school, I'm halfway through this, and people are like, no, that's not going to work out. So I went on and I took listening with Dr. Benton, like everybody else has. And that class, it did wonders in my life because it made me reflect on myself. It made me learn who I was. Like everybody else, I thought I was a perfect listener. All my friends come to me with their stories and their issues, so I thought I had it. But no, when I got into that class, I felt so little. I was like, oh my gosh, I do not know anything about listening. And not only did it teach me about listening, it taught me about how important communication is, how important, no matter what setting it is, whether it's in relationships, whether it's in an organization, whatever, communication is very important. So this class really did bring me back, and it gave me the strength to carry on, to think about things to do with my communication major. As an international student, I have the option to stay or to go home, which I would want to go home because that's where my family is. And like I said, if you're not in the health field or accounting, people have the misconception that you can't do anything. So it really did build up my courage, and it made me go on. So I sat down and I thought again, and I'm like, what am I going to do with this major? And I came to a conclusion. Dr. Terry Concona gave us an assignment this one time, and he was like, I want you to create 4 tools where it'll help you with the internal communication within an organization. And he was so ambiguous with this assignment. And I sat down and I thought to myself, how am I going to do this? I sat down and I tapped into my mind, my powerful, powerful mind, and I created these tools. And at the end of the semester, I got my grade back and I looked at these tools and I was like, wow, did I really do this? I did this. And I was very impressed with myself. That's when I decided, I like this. I like creating tools. I like going into organizations and learning things and helping them with their communication, especially with what I've learned, the skills. So I decided that I was going to go into consulting, communication consulting. So I went back to my dad and I'm like, this is what I want to do. And he was like, that's a brilliant idea. That's the best idea I've ever heard. And being from Zimbabwe, nobody has done this before. So it's really exciting and scary at the same time. But when I think about it, and I'm like, I feel so small, but yet so big because I have all these plans, I go back to my listening. And there's this one TED Talk that we listened to, and this lady says, fake it until you become it. So that's when I decided that I'm going to go back home when I graduate December 2013, and I'm going to open a business, and it's going to be a business that helps organizations with their internal communications, building that internal communication, and which helps them communicate to their outsiders. As well as that, I'm going to do something that I learned from Dr. Geiger. I'm going to do research. I took a research class with Dr. Geiger, and I found it so important that research is very important. So I will be doing research for organizations that want to bring in a new product or have an existing product. And that's what I'm going to do. So altogether, all I want to say is that a lot of communication majors, I wish there were some more in here to listen to this. You get here and you're like, what am I going to do with communication because it's so bored. But at the end of the day, what in life is there if there's no communications? Communications is everything. And I want to thank all my professors and everything that I've learned, because now I'm going to be a great communication